Hi, I'm Daniel Gold, and welcome to the Gold Standard Leadership Lab. By day, I'm a partner at a leading advisory firm where I draw upon my background as an attorney to help my clients succeed. This podcast, though, is my personal project, completely separate and apart from my day job, but reflects the same passion that I exhibit everywhere for teaching, mentoring, and helping others succeed through simple, impactful lessons. It is my hope that you'll walk away with practical takeaways to help you on your leadership journey. Thanks for being a part of the community and for joining me in the Leadership Lab. Let's get started. So many workplaces still operate as if the old command and control methods work. Managers think the way to get results from their team is through carrots and sticks. Bonus this, gift card that. Now, I'm not saying that rewards don't have their place. They do. I've earned quite a few myself over my career. But for today's workforce, these tactics no longer inspire sustained performance. I've seen this play out in real time. A manager announces a new initiative with a flashy email about a contest. Hit your numbers, win a prize. Maybe it's a gift card. Maybe it's a plaque. Maybe it's recognition at a company meeting. People nod, they participate, and then nothing fundamentally changes afterward. Why? The energy fades as soon as the contest ends. Because this approach treats people like machines that respond only to external motivation. It ignores what actually drives performance. Purpose, autonomy, and the feeling that work truly matters. And it's not just startups or tech firms leading and learning this truth. Even legacy industries such as law firms, finance, and consulting are realizing that authority does not create loyalty. Empathy does. Leaders who understand the shift are discovering that service is actually the new competitive advantage. So I want to talk a little bit about a generational shift. When the millennials entered the workforce, they wanted something different. Older generations like mine, I'm a Generation Xer, we all thought that they were asking for way too much balance, too much meaning. Yet as the millennials started overtaking the workforce, all of a sudden came along the Gen Zers. Gen Zers have taken that expectation even further. They get their work done, but on their schedule and on their terms, and they do it on time. And honestly, the more I've been thinking about it, the more I think that's how work should be done. What Gen Z has shown us is something vital. They care deeply about what is right and what is fair. They challenge outdated norms instead of accepting them. If a meeting could be an email, they're going to say it. If a project can be completed asynchronously, well, they're going to make that happen. They prioritize outcomes over optics. That mindset aligns perfectly with what forward-thinking organizations actually need. Teams that perform because they believe in the mission, not because they fear missing a metric. So here's the truth. If you spend more time working than doing anything else, that work actually should have real meaning. It should connect to something bigger. It should actually matter. When people lose sight of that connection, disengagement sets in. And what happens? Well, they do the minimum and they quietly begin looking for the next opportunity. But when they understand how their tasks contribute to a mission that they believe in, well, everything changes. And what's so interesting about how Gen Zers believe is that this is the essence of what is called servant leadership and what I want to talk with all of you about today. It flips the traditional leadership model by making service the foundation of authority. Leaders serve their teams instead of commanding them, and the result is trust, connection, and long-term performance. But this concept isn't new. So let's take a quick look back. Robert K. Greenleaf introduced this concept of servant leadership a half a century ago. That's right, 50 years ago in the 1970s. And his core idea was simple and powerful, which is this: serve first, lead second. Leaders earn the right to lead by caring deeply for the people that they guide. So Greenleaf worked at AT&T for nearly 4 decades. He saw how rigid hierarchies created distance between executives and those that are actually doing the work. He watched talented people lose their spark because they felt unseen. And after retiring, he wrote the book, The Servant as Leader. This was redefining everyone's understanding back then of leadership. His message landed at a critical culture moment when America was questioning authority and power structures. He gave language to what great leaders have always known, and that is leadership is about service. It is not about control. What made Greenleaf's work last is that it was not theoretical. He described leadership as a skill set grounded in listening, empathy, healing, awareness, persuasion, and stewardship. To be clear, these are not soft skills. They were success skills that drive results in every organization. And so what is actually very interesting is that the data on this is pretty clear. Research confirms that intuition already tells us, which is that teams that are led by servant leaders perform better. They stay longer and they innovate more effectively. In fact, there was a 2021 Leadership and Organization Development Journal meta-analysis which found strong correlations between servant leadership and outcomes such as job satisfaction, organizational commitment, and team performance. Another study that was published in the Journal of Business Ethics linked servant leadership to higher levels of trust and psychological safety, a concept we've talked about many times here on the Gold Standard Leadership Lab, across diverse industries. And the mechanism is really straightforward. When people feel cared for, they reciprocate. When they know that their leader has their back, they take smart risks. When they see humility modeled from the top, then they follow suit. Servant leadership creates psychological safety. They create this feeling that there is an opportunity to speak up without fear or humiliation or retaliation. And that is what drives innovation and loyalty. What's interesting more is that millennials and Gen Zers, they don't want bosses who command. They want coaches who listen. It's pretty amazing. Servant leadership meets that need. These generations grew up with information at their fingertips. They have seen behind the curtain of corporate jargon, and authenticity matters to them because they can spot inauthenticity instantly. For them, a leader who admits uncertainty is more credible than one who pretends to be infallible. A leader who asks for input earns more respect than one who dictates every single move. Servant leadership aligns perfectly with each of these expectations. So now let's talk about what servant leadership looks like in practice. So, does your day look any differently as a servant leader? Well, first, it's important to note that servant leaders listen without an agenda. Most managers, I'm willing to bet, listen simply to respond. They're already preparing their reply before you finish speaking. Servant leaders listen to understand. They ask clarifying questions and confirm what they heard before moving forward. I once worked for a manager who paused every time someone finished speaking and asked, "Tell me more." That small habit made everyone feel heard, and it changed the team dynamic. Second, they empower rather than control. Traditional managers keep decision-making close. They need to approve everything. Servant leaders distribute decision-making authority. They trust their people to determine the best path forward. They provide guidance and support, not micromanagement. Third, they develop people as a core responsibility. So many leaders talk about growth but fail to make time for it. Servant leaders make it central to their role. They schedule consistent one-on-ones. They ask about career goals and create opportunities for their team's growth. Fourth, they model vulnerability. What does that mean? It means that they admit mistakes and then they share lessons. They choose accountability. They own what has happened, and they create more trust than any success story ever could. I want to be clear that vulnerability is not a weakness. It is strength that invites connection with the whole team. Fifth, servant leaders connect daily work to the larger mission. So you may recall that as being something that we've talked about before with objectives, strategies, and tactics. So the daily work is always connected to the larger mission, meaning that the tactics that are done are always aligning back up to the strategy and the objectives. Servant leaders tell stories about how the team's work affects customers and communities. They make the abstract tangible. That sense of impact inspires excellence among the team. There are some common misconceptions I want to address about servant leadership. Some people hear this and they think it means that you're being soft or avoiding hard decisions. On the contrary, servant leaders set high standards. They maintain accountability like we just discussed. And they make difficult choices when necessary. The difference lies, though, in how they approach these moments. A traditional manager might terminate an employee abruptly, viewing it as a mere transaction, and they move on with their day. A servant leader will still make that hard decision when needed, but handles it with dignity and transparency. They give clear feedback and chances to improve. When separation becomes unavoidable, they conduct it with respect. Others misunderstand servant leadership as self-sacrifice to the point of burnout. Servant leaders care for themselves so that they can care for others. They model boundaries and demonstrate that passion does not require exhaustion and burnout. Okay, so what can you do right now? Well, as we noted before, this is not theory. You can start small today and make an immediate difference with both yourself and with your team. For instance, when you meet with your team, listen fully and put your phone down. When they see that simple act of placing your phone down, and I should say upside down, so that you can't see all of the notifications, that says something to your team. That says, I see you and I hear you, and I am paying attention just to you. Stop thinking about the next meeting. Pay attention to what is being said and also what is left unsaid. Importantly, notice tone and most importantly, the body language of your team members. Give people space to solve problems. When someone brings you a challenge, resist the instinct to provide the answer. Ask what they think. Ask what they have tried. Guide them through the process instead of trying to solve it for them. You'll often discover they already know what to do. Remind your team why their work matters. Share real stories that link their efforts to the mission. Again, objective, strategy, and tactics. So that may mean that you are explaining how the technology works to help protect clients, or you might show how a new feature helps real users, or whatever it might be. Regardless, make the mission visible. Encourage open discussion of setbacks without fear. Again, going back to psychological safety at work. When mistakes occur, focus on systems and learning. Ask what happened and what can be improved. Avoid the finger pointing. Listen, when you create an environment where people can say, I made a mistake or I need help without fear, you've done a pretty amazing job. Okay, last. I know this is going to sound weird, but show your humanity. Really. Share a recent mistake or lesson you are still learning as a leader. It makes you human. Thus the word humanity. When you discuss a leadership challenge that you are navigating right now, that level of transparency, that builds trust and signals safety to your team members. Servant leadership is not a program to implement. It is not a line item on your strategy plan. It is a daily practice. It is the choice to listen when you could speak. It is the choice to empower when you could control. And it is the choice to serve when you could so easily just command. Now, here's a final reflection. Leadership today is not about power or status. It is about service. When you lead through service, you cultivate trust and loyalty and engagement. People will always do their best work when they know that their leader is in it with them. And finally, remember, leadership isn't about perfection. It is about progress. Take this lesson, put it into action, and continue setting the gold standard in your own life and at work. See you all next time.